Hey guys, peperomia are definitely some of the most popular and easy to care for houseplants out there. So if you're into really low maintenance houseplants that have frankly a lot to offer with this beautiful foliage, then peperomia are definitely worthy of your consideration. There's quite a nice variety of different looking plants all in the Peperomia family, so there's definitely something out there for everyone. I'm going to be sharing the different Peperomia I have in my collection, as well as all of the crucial care tips that you need to know to care and love for these beautiful houseplants. So before jumping into the general care tips for peperomia, let me show you the plants that I have and the different examples so you can get an idea of the variety that is peperomia. So the first plant I want to mention is this Pilea. You may already be familiar with this peperomia. Now, I've done a propagation and care video on these guys, so if that's something that interests you, definitely check that out. This is a watermelon Peperomia or Peperomia Argyreia, and I absolutely love this houseplant. Vining Peperomia exists as well, and this guy right here is my Peperomia Hope. Now, I've had this plant for quite some time, and I have to say it just gets better and better. String of turtles is another example of a trailing peperomia plant. Now, I did get this guy and he was quite small, but I have to say I'm really looking forward to this getting a lot bigger. As I'm sure you noticed, there are some commonalities between all of these plants and some things that make them peperomia. First and foremost being the roundish, sort of succulent-like leaves. This is sort of a common thread throughout all of these houseplants, and I think it's really what makes these plants so interesting. On top of that, you can get some peperomia that have some really interesting coloration and patterns on those sort of roundish, succulent-like leaves. And the watermelon peperomia is an example of that, and so are the string of turtles. Thanks for checking out this video. I'm Tyler, and if you like what you're seeing or you find this video to be useful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, or better yet, you can subscribe to my channel. There is a peperomia that is on my wish list that I don't yet have, and I would definitely love to add a Peperomia frost to my collection. It looks very similar to the watermelon, but a lot icier. Which peperomia plants do you have or want? What issues have you had? Sound off in the comments down below. So when it comes to caring for these plants, like I said earlier, it's fairly easy and uncomplicated. In terms of lighting, peperomia, generally speaking, want nice, bright, indirect light. So what does that mean? That means that it is, for example, inset or just off of a south-facing window, for example, so it's not getting too much direct sunlight, but it's getting that nice, bright, indirect light. Out of the peperomia that I have here, I would say that the Peperomia Hope, I would definitely give this the most sort of direct sunlight out of all of these. This definitely gets a couple of hours of morning direct sunlight, and in terms of getting the least, the watermelon doesn't get any, I don't give it any direct sunlight whatsoever. Yeah, so there you go. Now, obviously, you need to avoid any sort of harsh, direct afternoon sunlight with any and all of your peperomia. In terms of a soil mix, I generally use a peat moss and perlite combo, and that works really well. And I think some of my peperomia are due for a repotting, but as a general rule, peperomia definitely like to be root bound. So I'm thinking of repotting my Peperomia Hope, but I've had this for nearly 5 years now, so I would say peperomia probably could stay in the same container for at least 2 or 3 years, if not longer, before you want to consider repotting. The right container in conjunction with the perlite that you're using will ensure that your peperomia and their root system aren't being overwhelmed with too much water. When it comes to watering your peperomia, the best tip I can give you is to water them once the topsoil is dry to the touch. When it comes to peperomia, this is probably what you want to keep your eye on most. Ultimately, you don't want the soil a few inches below the surface to completely dry out, but at the same time, you don't want soggy soil either. So by watering it when the surface of that soil dries out is a really good way to sort of keep that sort of balance and have that right level of moisture for the plant. Now, peperomia do prefer humidity, and I have to admit that I don't keep any of my peperomia near any of the humidifiers I have. I would be guessing, but I'm pretty certain that in the summer months they are getting the humidity that they need. Now, that being said, because I live in the Northeast, in the winter, they probably are not. So that's definitely something that I could consider and do better on. And speaking of winter, you are definitely going to want to cut back on watering and fertilizing during the winter months, and let me touch base on that now. So when it comes to fertilizing peperomia, what I have typically done is in the springtime, I will put in a few of those slow release fertilizer pearls or pellets, and basically that's all I will do, and I won't add any fertilizer or use any sort of fertilization until the following spring. It's also a good idea to cut back on the frequency of watering during those winter months as well. Well, that's it for me. Oh yeah, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Miss you guys already. Until the next one.